Hey guys, it's Jeff. So something quite interesting happened in South Africa this week. March and March, the movement led by Jacinta and Ngobese-Zuma sat down with AfriForum and they've now agreed to form what they're calling a collaborative working group. AfriForum CEO Kriel described it afterwards as a brilliant meeting, and both sides seem to have come away from it genuinely positive about what could potentially be achieved together. And I think there's actually a much bigger story here than simply immigration. March and March has become known largely for its campaign against illegal immigration. Ngobese-Zuma has consistently argued that their focus is not on foreigners generally, but undocumented immigration and government's failure to properly enforce South Africa's immigration laws. But March and March is now trying to build something much broader. They've established the SA First Forum, which is intended to become a civil society and legal advocacy organization that can take on cases on behalf of ordinary South Africans, particularly people who may not have the money or resources to enforce their rights themselves. And this is where their interest in AfriForum becomes particularly interesting. Jacinta has basically said AfriForum has spent years figuring out how to organize communities, raise money, litigate, and build institutions. So why shouldn't we learn from the things they've done successfully? She has even spoken about learning how organizations like this finance and build institutions, including educational institutions. And I think there's a philosophy behind that which is worth paying attention to. March and March doesn't want communities to simply remain at the mercy of government. The idea is, yes, hold government accountable, and yes, protest when government fails. Yes, use the courts when necessary, but at the same time, build something yourself. Build organizations, build legal capacity, build schools and other institutions. Organize communities so that they become stronger and less dependent on politicians to solve every problem. And interestingly, that's very close to something Kriel himself said after the meeting. He said that sometimes it's necessary to protest against government failures, but it is even more important to use your own hands and to build the future that you want. That to me might be the most important part of this entire story, because AfriForum and March come from very different communities. They don't agree on everything, and both organizations openly acknowledge that. Jacinta herself has made it clear that learning from AfriForum doesn't mean they're suddenly going to agree with everything AfriForum says or does. They're simply willing to learn from the things they believe AfriForum has done well. And Kriel's approach seems to be much the same. Cooperate where you agree, challenge each other where you disagree, and don't allow those disagreements to prevent cooperation that could actually benefit ordinary South Africans. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't legitimate concerns. There have been serious controversies surrounding the immigration debate, and the line must remain very clear. Demanding that government enforce immigration law is legitimate. Intimidation, violence, or citizens simply taking the law into their own hands is not. And importantly, after this meeting, both AfriForum and March explicitly said that their activities should be peaceful and lawful, and that violence and intimidation has no place in what they're trying to do. But perhaps that's exactly why this relationship could become interesting. What if an established civil society organization like AfriForum can help channel some of that enormous grassroots energy into courts, institutions, community projects, and lawful advocacy? And perhaps AfriForum can also learn something from a movement that has demonstrated an ability to mobilize people very quickly around issues they feel strongly about. For far too long in South Africa, almost every single issue becomes racialized or party political. You have to choose a camp. But maybe civil society doesn't have to work like that. Perhaps you can disagree fundamentally about certain things and still say, on this particular problem, we agree, so let's solve it together. And perhaps the most interesting part of this meeting isn't March and March learning from AfriForum or AfriForum working with March and March. Maybe it's the idea that South Africans don't have to agree on everything before we're prepared to build something together. And I think that's something worth watching.